Hey everyone, it's T-Lore, and today I want to bring you some space display settings that you can use in Star Trek Online to really change how you experience the game. So a lot of people have been complaining about the overabundance of space clutter and magic and all the bright lights and flashing, and I get it. I completely agree. There's a lot that goes on. And this is actually in-game live right now. I have completely turned off the HUD. So I'm going to work backwards and show you a lot of different settings that you can do to filter out some of the clutter that's in the game. So the first thing to do is Alt F12 will hide and show the HUD. So you can do this for screenshots if you want to take screenshots of your ships, or if you just want to turn it off, that's fine. And even if you turn the HUD off, your abilities still work. So I just hit spacebar, which is one of my keybinds, and it's still using my abilities. However, I'm going to turn the HUD back on. You'll notice there's a few extra elements here that are missing. Now, I don't recommend this, but you can actually hide additional elements. And the problem is, I just hit full impulse, and my ship is not moving at all. So when you turn off some of these elements, it can give you undesired results. And if you ever notice that something on your screen is missing and you'd like to have it back, all you have to do is hit F12. So this is very similar to Alt F12 where it shows and hides it. This will bring up the UI Rearrangement screen. And all these little buttons that say show or hide will let you turn on and off the different things that are in the screen. So I have most of my abilities towards the bottom so that I have the top of my screen pretty empty to be able to see. This is purely a preference thing. Some people prefer to have them on the sides or however you want to do it. But for my preference, I have everything along the bottom. My endeavors are towards the top, but you can pretty well minimize those once you finish them or turn it on and off. Also, since I'm max level, I've done things like hiding the experience bar. And you'll notice I also have the team status bar. If you have not a lot of screen real estate, you can move this off to the other side and everyone's buffs will go off the screen instead of into the middle of your firing area. But I don't worry about that too much personally, but that's something that you can look at. You can also move where you want things to be so that they're not on top of each other. With the HUD turned back on, we can use all of our abilities. Everything works just the way we expect it to, and you have the ability to click and use these. However, you'll notice that sometimes there's a lot of what are called fly-ins, which are announcements of people opening a rare loot item in a lockbox or something to that effect. And these are changed down here in this bottom portion right here where the drop-down arrow says more. And this will be wherever your mini-map is. And you can go into notification settings. So if you go into here, these are set up how I like to have it. You can tweak some of these, but the fly-in is when you get the text across your screen that says so-and-so has opened a T6 coupon. Turn that off. You can turn that off in chat and fly-in. I would leave on admin announcements. Those are ones like server shutting down in 10 minutes for maintenance. Those are the kind of things you want to see. Most of the rest of these I've turned off fly-ins, and if you're doing a lot of recording or something like that, you can turn on or off your friends logging in and out. But if you want to know when your friends get on to be able to play with them, you can have this on. So those are some of the ones that you see, and then this help pop-ups one at the bottom is when you create a new character, it pops up boxes that say, is this helpful, or here's how you click this ability. You can turn those off right here immediately. Now, some of the other things that we have to look at are some of the basic menu options. So how do we get to those? If you click on this gear, which is game menu again in your mini map, or you can hit escape and options is right there underneath rearrange HUD and go into the basic tab. There's several options here that are really helpful. You can click through these and see what you like. On my ships, I don't have the shield directional FX on. Okay, so you can see those little grids around you. Those are the shield directional FX. If we turn that off, you can see those disappear. So that can help your immersion, but it also, if you have those on, you can see when your shields start to drop. That's the same information that's here, although the colors don't exactly line up with the colors that you'll see here. It's the same general idea. Compact UI allows you to change some of the UI elements. So if we turn that off, you can see it stretches them out a little bit. It's taking up a little bit more space with some frames around them. So I like to turn that on. I don't think we need all the extra space in between each of the different buttons. Move equipped items to a newly readied ship. This is less of a UI issue and more of a functionality issue. This can work okay, but I tend to keep it off, especially as I'm cycling through ships that I need for traits. Basically, when you pull a new ship out that you buy from the C-store or that you claim, it's going to move all of your equipment on your current ship onto that one. And I don't really recommend that. Usually you're going to want to manually clean out all the stock equipment that it comes with and put on what you want on there. Now, I'm not going to go through all these. Some of these you're just going to have to play around with and see if you like. One that I do recommend is disabling mission auto hail. Turn that on. That's going to make it so that every time you log in, you're not getting hailed about your next mission. And that's kind of an annoying thing that you can turn off pretty easily. I also recommend that you turn on auto loot. If you turn that off when you try and loot a loot box, it will show you a little window that says take or take all. And if you turn this on, it's just going to immediately take it. So if we look at damage floaters, which are the little numbers that you see coming off of this ship here, those can really slow down your computer. So we can go into the HUD and turn those off. And you can see now I'm shooting at it. There's not really any damage floaters going. You can turn on and off those for a bunch of different individual settings. If you want to be able to see if you're flanking, though, you want to leave those on. I also wanted to talk through some of these targeting and life bar options that are in here. So if we go into the game menu again and into the HUD, you can see that there is a bunch of different options here that we can look at. So we've already looked at player damage, floaters, and everything like that, but what we're looking at are enemy non-player characters. So you have enemy name, which is this little text that's above it, enemy life, which is the green bar that's below it here. These are mostly empty because they're pretty much dead. Enemy reticle is this targeting portion right here. Fighters and mines, name, life, and reticle. So it's the same options just for mines and fighters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cycle through these and just turn them off. So if we turn off the enemy name, you can see we don't have any names on any of these, so you don't know if it's a sphere or a cube that you're targeting. So I like to make sure that we have the name on targeted so that we know what we're targeting. You could also just do this always, and that way you can choose which one you want to shoot at. Enemy life is that bar, and I definitely would recommend that one being targeted. This will show you the bar on the enemy that you're targeting, and obviously if it's empty, they'll just die and disappear. But in this case, we don't have to see what enemy life is on each of these other targets. And then enemy reticle is going to give you this distance to the target, so we'll turn that one off so that you can see. And that one I also recommend as targeted. So that way you can see how far away it is what you're targeting. You can also switch it to always, that way it's a lot easier to choose between the different ships. And this is really just a little bit of a preference thing here, but you can see mouse over also will change if you mouse over them, so there's that. And target of target and recently damaged are both other options that you can have as well. So if we damage them, so now that it's been recently damaged, it's going to show that, and then it'll eventually disappear because it hasn't been recently damaged. So that's another option that you can have. Now, one that I do recommend you changing is that these mines and fighters, you want to be able to target those. So it's nice to have at least a reticle, which is this little targeting arc, or perhaps a name or something that's showing up so that you can see them. As far as NPCs, friendly players, that's going to be like this IKS targ. You can turn that on or off. I would highly recommend you not turn all of these off. So if we go through and turn off all of these, you can't see your targets at all, and you also don't know what you're shooting. So while that cleans up your HUD quite a bit, it does make it almost impossible to find what you're shooting at. So I recommend picking something that you always have on so that you know that you can target. And then if you have at least mouse over and targeted for some of these other options such as name or life, those will also help you in targeting down other enemies. So this is pretty much what I run. So that way I can see where my targets are. I can see the health bar when it pops up. And also I have names. I believe I also want to run names all the time, so you can make sure you're clicking on a sphere or a probe, or if you're in something like ISE, you'll have nanite probes, and you want to prioritize the ones that say nanite, even though they look exactly the same. And we can go through here, and you can see there's a lot of other of these options that you can play with, and some of this is for ground, but that's really what those will do, is you can switch between what's being targeted and what's not. Alright, so we've got a couple of more options that we want to look at here, so we'll go back into it and look under our Controls tab. And for this one, we want to be able to adjust this camera shaking. Means that when you get hit, your whole screen is going to shake. I recommend turning that off. I mean, it's an immersive effect, but it can get a little bit old after a while. And we can also do something like some of our targeting abilities in here. So if we go with our camera type, I have free camera that lets me just move it around and it's not going to move on its own. If we switch to follow target, you can click on it. So I'll click on that escort, and eventually the camera should start following it. So now you can see that the camera is kind of following it in a weird way, but this is kind of annoying because when I'm going to turn over here to look at something, it's going to immediately pull me back to following that target. So if you're trying to click over here and I want to target, it doesn't give you enough time to target something else before it starts moving again. Now if we switch back to chase camera, what that does is it always puts it behind you. So again, if you're trying to target something, it's going to recenter you very quickly. But if you're flying with something like a game joystick or a gamepad, this will let you keep behind your ship and feel a lot more connected to which direction that you're moving in. I recommend, honestly, just switching to free camera. This is going to be the easiest to use on a mouse and keyboard, and we want to be able to use that to look ahead of where we're going, or if we're shooting broadside, to be able to aim off to the side where we're actually shooting. You'll notice it didn't take until I hit OK there. We also want to look at a couple of other options in here. So we want to look at this only attack target if selected, and this we want to be off, because if you're using something like fire at will or other abilities that are auto firing for you, or even just firing your weapons, you don't want to have to force yourself to have a target in order to be doing damage. Now this will let you click abilities and not actually have something targeted. So we want to make sure that this is off. It makes a big difference. If you have this on and you don't have any targets, it's not going to let you shoot. Now, if we attack, this one's kind of a preference, but I would recommend this be on. So it will automatically pick a target if you're attacking, and you also have some of these other similar options. It says never auto-target objects or pets. We want this to be off. This is a little bit backwards, but it will never target pets or mines or anything like that if you have this on. And you want to be able to target down those high yield torpedoes or those fighters that are taking you out. So we want to turn this off. And any of these other options can just kind of be a preference, whether you want to target the threatening enemies first or select the attacker if you're being attacked. We just kind of leave these in this configuration. The other option here at the bottom is auto attack. There's a bunch of different options here. Maintain auto attack is going to keep shooting. Even if you lose your target or try to get out of combat, it's going to keep forcing you back into combat. This is not recommended if somebody says, oh no, it's a botched run, we've got to fly out, and you're going to stay in red alert until you completely get out of range. So I would not recommend maintain auto attack. Toggle non-combat cancels is going to be very similar. Until that red alert goes off, it's going to force you back into combat. Toggle never cancels is also going to be a little bit awkward, because you're flipping a switch on and off, and there's no indication as to whether you're in auto attack mode or not. I would say toggle target change cancels. So if you click off of a target, it's going to allow you to immediately stop auto attacking, and then you can immediately fire your weapons or target another target to get back into combat. So this gives you the most control over when you're firing. And disable auto attack just means you're manually firing all your weapons, which is a lot of extra work, especially when you have 8 weapons. I do not recommend this. The easiest way to do is toggle target change cancels, and then if you have specific weapons that you want to fire manually, you can just keep this green rectangle around them for auto attack, and then the ones that you want manually don't have that green rectangle around them. I just did that by right clicking on individual weapons, and the order that you do it in matters. So I'm actually going to go back and change this because I want to fire my forward weapons first, and the order that you click them in and turn them on in will be the order that they auto fire in. Another option that you're going to want to look at is this display tab under options and display mode. This is going to change how you interact with Star Trek Online. You can do windowed, where it'll just be a separate window that can be smaller than your screen. You can do full screen, or you can do windowed maximized. I do windowed maximized because that lets me tab out into a second screen or another window and not completely minimize Star Trek. So if I did full screen, if I go look up in my browser and try and go to a website, it's going to completely minimize the game and I can't see it anymore. Doing windowed maximized lets me keep it there. And a quick way to tell is if you go all the way up in this corner, it's going to pop up with these 2 little buttons up here in the corner. One last thing I wanted to talk about is non-instant tooltip delay, and this lets you change how quickly tooltips pop up. So you'll see this little text that's popping up as I'm mousing over here. You'll notice this the most when you're using the exchange. So now I can quickly browse over these and immediately get a window that pops up. It tells me if they have the right traits and everything that I'm looking for. Now if I change this to, we'll just change it to something like 2.5. Just to show you a little bit of how this works. You'll notice I'm hovering over it and it takes that long for the window to pop up. Now sometimes you can go between listings without it disappearing, but if it disappears you have to wait 2.5 seconds for it to pop up. So I recommend that you keep this at a pretty low value. Like I said, I keep mine at 0 so I don't waste any time on the exchange. I can very quickly scroll through these and not lose anything. You'll notice that the default is 1, which is a little slow, but it's not too bad. And you can see sometimes you can get it fast enough to where the tooltip doesn't disappear, but I highly recommend using it at 0. Now where this does become a problem is when you're hovering over your abilities at the bottom. So you can see it brings up the tooltip and you can just move to another location and it'll move around. Or you can move completely off and then you don't have any tooltips to worry about.